Though the Trump administration in general is struggling to deal with the fallout of its national security scandal known as Signalgate or WikiLeaks, one person in particular, besides Trump and Pete Hegseth and Mike Waltz, who's dealing with the brunt of it, is Karoline Leavitt, Trump's press secretary. Now, she's usually vicious and combative. She certainly was yesterday during a White House press briefing, which she started late and ended early to avoid questions about Signalgate. But earlier today, she was confronted in the driveway of the White House with brutal new polling for Trump and MAGA about this issue, and then she visibly panicked and ran away. It was glorious to watch. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. Now again, to give Karoline Leavitt her flowers, she does a really good impression of someone who's stupid, but Leavitt is actually really smart. She's verbally agile. She's quick on her feet. She is the culmination of the MAGA movement with respect to press secretaries. She's more MAGA and more skilled at being MAGA than Kayleigh McEnany, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, Sean Spicer. She is like the apex of what Trump is looking for in a press secretary, which means she's almost always wrong on the facts and she's a vicious liar. So watching her demeanor shift on this topic has just been really fun to watch. Here's her being confronted by reporters with devastating new polling, and I want you to hear her tone of voice, listen to her response, and how quickly she wants to get the hell out of that conversation.
Do you have an update on the status of the internal investigation that you described yesterday into the signal?
Not this morning, but we've been incredibly transparent about this entire situation, and we will continue to be.
A new YouGov poll shows that around 75% of Americans consider that the Signalgate problem is a very serious problem. Does the administration plan to hold anyone accountable, potentially change their messaging on it moving forward?
Well, we have never denied that this was a mistake, and the National Security Advisor took responsibility for that. And we have said we are making changes. We are looking into the matter to ensure it can never happen again. But of course, the president has put together a team. Look at the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, who was voted in by the United States Senate, putting our warfighters first, making the world a safer place for the American people and for all people. And we're going to stay focused on that. And I think the arrest of an MS-13 gang leader this morning speaks volumes about the competence of the president and his team. Thanks, guys.
So she wanted to get the hell out of that conversation. That's one thing to know. Again, I'll say this. Leavitt is not afraid usually to mix it up with the press because she lies her ass off, right? She's second only perhaps to Kellyanne Conway in Trump's orbit in terms of being like a spin master. But notice how she's eager to get out of that conversation. And also, again, notice her demeanor, okay? So first, she's much more humble, much more gracious, much more calm, certainly than she was in yesterday's White House press briefing, where she's always like stone-faced, pursed lips, ice cold. I mean, just wanting to stick it to the reporters. Here, she was more, I would argue, human, more relatable, more empathetic, gentler in tone. And then also note how nervous she was. Okay, she stammered and stumbled over her words, which she usually doesn't. Again, fairly quick-witted to give her flowers here. So you can tell that this news is a shock to her, and one that she's struggling in real time. Like, oh my God, the American people are not on my side, no matter how much I say that they are. No, the evidence sits squarely against them. And we have additional things I want to focus on with respect to that recent polling, which we covered in more detail in a previous video. But I also want to show you an interview that she had also this morning with a very friendly environment, Fox and Friends. Okay, so let's play this clip on this subject because Brian Kilmeade, a MAGA Fox News host, the one with the red tie on the end, man, he's like, listen, they're going to just be so mean to you. How are you going to be dealing with this? Because this is all the liberal media wants to talk about. So I want you to watch this clip and we'll unpack it together.
Karoline, we only have a minute left, but right now we know the pattern. They're going to pound you on the Signal story all day. How do you handle that? Meanwhile, there's so many other things to talk about.
The president and our entire team have been incredibly transparent. We have taken every question under the sun about this story, and the National Security Advisor has taken responsibility for this mistake. We are looking into it to ensure it can never happen again, and we're going to continue doing the business of the American people that they elected this President Trump to do, which includes removing illegal criminals from our communities, which includes America First trade policies. Yesterday, the president announced a 25% tariff on foreign auto vehicles and auto parts. This is huge for our auto industry. In fact, the United Auto Workers Union, Sean Fain, the president, came out this morning and applauded the president for this exceptional policy. More jobs, more investments, more money coming back to America. We are going to continue to focus on that.
Well, today is definitely a big win for the.
So again, right? Obviously, she's spinning. Obviously, she's pivoting, trying to present Trump's recent trade war escalation as a win for the American people when, in fact, it objectively isn't. But again, different tone, right? She's not the liberal media sucks and these friggin' Democrats suck and they're propagandists. A very markedly different tone than the one she took yesterday at that disastrous White House press briefing, which isn't to say that her tone won't resume at the next one. But it seems to indicate that they are increasingly aware of the backlash on this and the threat it poses to whatever popularity they think they have. And if I were advising the Trump administration and in a way that would want them to succeed, I would also encourage them, you guys need to be more humble. You need to admit that this was a problem. Admit this is a screw up. Admit that if the shoe were on the other foot, you'd be trying to burn the place down, proverbially speaking. Fire walls, fire Hegseth, apologize to the American people, and then run in the opposite direction. Say, okay, we made quick, decisive action. We apologized. You have your soundbite. Now let's run on. But they've been doubling down instead, right? And trying to stick it to the media. And that has done them no favors. And it's reflected in the polling. As Mediaite reports about this recent YouGov poll, which we discussed in a previous video, but their focus is rightly on Republicans are having an issue with how the Trump administration is handling this. New poll finds strong majority of Republicans believe Trump's Signalgate is a serious problem. A new survey from YouGov found that a strong majority of Republicans believe that the Trump administration's Signalgate is a serious problem. The U.S. was rocked this week by the revelation that Jeffrey Goldberg, the editor of The Atlantic, was included in a group chat of top Trump officials discussing a bombing of a foreign country over the messaging app. YouGov conducted the first poll on the fallout of the scandal, which has included administration denials that any classified information was shared, despite specifics about the military operation being discussed. Of those polled, a whopping 74% believe the scandal to be serious, including 60% of Republicans, 89% of Democrats, and 72% of independents. Axios on Thursday highlighted some of the survey's more eye-popping finds. 74% of Americans say the group chat discussed U.S. strikes on Houthi rebels in Yemen was a very, quote, a very or somewhat serious problem. 53% said very, 53%, a majority of Americans, period, which we discussed in the previous video. Over a quarter, 28% of Republicans polled said it was a very serious problem. One stunning stat, again, that we discussed in that recent video was a higher share of adults polled that they thought Signalgate was a serious problem than said the same about Hillary Clinton's use of a private email. We know how mimetic that scandal was. So this has the potential to be an enormous liability for Republicans, which is why, quite frankly, Democrats should be vicious and consistent in pouncing on. Do not let up for any moment. If you have a camera in front of you, a microphone in front of you, all Democrats should be talking about is Signalgate. Do what Republicans would do under similar circumstances. But yes, it's insane that a majority, 60% of Republicans, found it at least somewhat serious. A majority of Republicans, a decisive majority, think the Signalgate is a serious problem. When you consider that Trump himself is unpopular, and increasingly so, with the shortest honeymoon period in modern American history, he's getting poor marks in the economy, this is potentially devastating for, if not Trump himself, who presumably won't run for re-election because he's prohibited by the 22nd Amendment, but even the Republicans around him. This could seriously hinder and hobble his administration and the Republican Party writ large. And I think that might explain why, at least for now, Karoline Leavitt is adopting a different sort of tone and why she seems panicked to discuss the fallout at all. Contrast that with how she behaved yesterday. You should check that video out because it was stunning. But here you go. Karoline Leavitt publicly panicking, publicly humbled, running away from reporters when asked questions about the fallout of Signalgate or whiskey leaks. Very interesting. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.